So this is the start of a short series based on ideas from my book, The Assertiveness Workbook. You know, if you're going to write 200 pages about communication styles, you'd better define what they are pretty early on. And there are 4 in the book: passive, aggressive, passive-aggressive, and assertive. And so, guess what? There will be 4 posts in this little series. I think you can guess what they'll be on. So first up is the passive style. I started out all these sections with a complete picture of a person who embodies that style. And for passive, I used Nadia. Full disclosure, by the way, Nadia is actually a fake person, but she's made up of bits of a number of people that I've seen over the years. And I've mixed bits and jobs and genders so that nobody is particularly identifiable. If that wasn't a worry, I could easily take just one person's story and tell that, because people who are passive in one area of their life are often passive pretty much across the board, not always, but often. Essentially, the passive style is a stance that you are servant to the world. That can sound pretty good, serving others. That's how a lot of us try to see ourselves working in mental health. We are the helpers serving other people. But we choose that. And sometimes that service involves confronting people with inconvenient truths, which people using the passive style aren't usually so good at. A person with the passive style doesn't usually see it as a choice. It's just their reality. They are not as important as other people, so they have to do what they're told. In Nadia's case, she has a mother who is reasonably healthy, but has become completely dependent on Nadia for everything. Drives to appointments, yard work, shopping, chores, and all of her social contact. The mother lives in her own house, but Nadia does everything for her. Rather than helping her mother, this has actually enabled the mother to become less and less functional. But that's not all. Nadia is married and she has a son, but she can't put her foot down at home. Nobody helps out, and she's constantly cleaning up after them, doing their chores, and getting apologetic when she doesn't do them fast enough. She does clerical work, and she has several bosses who all load her up with tasks to do, and she never points out that her workload is excessive. It doesn't really occur to her that they might be relying on her to tell them when she's full up. She just tries to keep up, and she feels closer and closer and closer to burnout. Nadia has no time for herself, and she spends her days running from place to place trying to satisfy everyone else's demands, not because all those people are incapable, but from a fear that if she doesn't do these things, she will be rejected, or everything will collapse. And all of those elements are things that I've seen over and over again, both in the office and in the outside world. And it's common in both women and men. So what's the behavior? Giving in to unreasonable demands from others. Oh, the overnight shift? The day after my wedding? Okay. No problem. Going along with others, even when you don't want to. You'd like to go to Burger King for our wedding anniversary? Oh, okay, great. Not offering their opinion until others have offered theirs. Capital punishment? What do you think? Oh, for jaywalking? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think so too. Never criticizing or giving negative feedback. I got your budget projections. No, the sticky note was creative. The crayon was just fine, no problem. Passive managers can be a real nightmare. And trying to be invisible. Hey, if I buy these pants, nobody will notice me at all. Perfect. Exactly what I've been looking for. Why do people use the passive style? Well, it's usually motivated by some hidden beliefs. Some examples: other people are more important than me. Or, if you're the employee, you have to say yes to whatever the boss wants. Or, other people can have control over their lives, but not me. Or, they'll reject me or divorce me or fire me if I don't do every single thing they want. So this style can result from thinking of yourself as less than other people. But causality tends to go in both directions. So acting like this can also strengthen the idea that you're worth less than other people, and that it would be too much of a change or a shock if you didn't do these things. And so you keep doing it, and the problem can spiral. So what are some of the emotions we see in people who overuse this style? The most obvious one is fear, usually of being rejected. Sooner or later, you are not going to be able to juggle all those plates. This cannot continue forever. So doom is coming towards you. Fear. But also resentment. Everybody is making all these demands on you, and you can just barely keep up. And they're so used to you going along with them that they're not even that appreciative when you do, right? So resentment is a natural consequence. One of the signs that I watch for that tells me a person may not be very assertive is that they report that they're surrounded by people who manipulate them, or I'm surrounded by users, or they feel used by other people all the time. Now, it might be that they've really somehow found themselves in the midst of all of these abusive people, maybe. But it may also be that it's their own style that's the issue. You know, other people can try to manipulate us, and I sometimes think, fair game. But we get to decide whether we are going to allow ourselves to be manipulated. And that is where assertiveness comes in. There's another emotional issue, a sense of helplessness, like your life is not your own, which it isn't if you can't ever say no. One of the theories of depression is the idea of learned helplessness, which means that whether your life is good or bad has nothing to do with your own efforts. It's not under your control. And so people who are very passive often find themselves sliding into depression because they are not exerting control over their own lives. The Assertiveness Workbook is really an adaptation of a group therapy program that I developed for people who'd been hospitalized for clinical depression. We had them attend a depression group, but a lot of those people clearly had a lot of guilt and difficulty taking charge of their own lives and being assertive. And it's hard to evaluate, but it seemed like the more they could take charge, sit in the driver's seat of their own lives, if you like, the faster they got better. Helplessness is a big problem. In As You Like It, Shakespeare has a famous speech. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. And on and on and on. So if you think of life as being like a stage, what's the role of a person who's using the passive style? I think their role is they're the audience. Everyone else is allowed on stage. They're not. They just have to support all those other people. That's it. They're not even in the show. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, if you like, the nature of the passive style. Next up, I'll talk about the aggressive style. You can get How to Be Miserable from your local bookseller or from Amazon. The link's below.